All right, good evening. This recording is basically just going to walk through how you could connect to your AWS Windows instance if you're using a Mac or you're using Windows. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be on Windows, so I will be doing this on a MacBook. So I'll quickly go ahead and share my screen. And two things you would need as prerequisites before we even dive in here. The first one for Mac users would be Windows Remote Desktop, right? So this is an app, you will get it from your App Store. So if I do go to my App Store, and it's on a different screen, so let me pull it up here, and I type in Windows Remote Desktop. This here, right here. This first one here is what you're looking to download. So you have to get this to be able to RDP to your Windows server, right? So I already have it. So you could see if you have it, it should look like this. It would look like something like this over here, right? That's what you would get. And friends, give me 1 second. Like I said, I'm recording, and once I'm done, we could proceed here. All right. So this is basically what you would need, like I said. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and flip my screen to the AWS console. I would go ahead and log in. So let's see, I am user, and you probably have an AWS account you will be using. So let me make sure I'm on the right one. And this is my account. So I'll quickly log in and I'll spin up a new ec2 Windows instance, right? So to do that, of course, I have two instances running. That's interesting. Okay, let me go ahead and stop this instances. Maybe all right. So while that instance is stopping, we would start this from scratch. So I'll go ahead and click on instances. I would launch a new instance. And then here, I would just type in maybe Benz new Windows UF. That's a long name. All right. And then for my OS image, I would choose Windows, right? And of course, you have different flavors of Windows, which you could choose here, but I'll stick with the latest version, which is the Server 22 base. I'll stick with that for now. And you could see it's a free tier that I chose. Over here, you're also able to, again, go through, it's going to be the same steps you would take to create an EC2 instance, right? So over here, sometimes people already have a key pair they would prefer to use. So don't be obliged to create a new key pair if you already have a key pair, right? You could use an existing key pair. You don't have to create a new one. For the sake of learning and for the sake of this video, I would just go ahead and create a new key pair. I would call this maybe Windows new, right? And then I'll create it. So when I create it, you could see it just downloaded on my laptop for me here. I will go ahead and again, you may have an existing security group, so you could just click existing, select security, existing security group, and just select from the drop down here, right? If I'm working, let's say if I'm already working on an existing project, I wouldn't create a new security group because I have like lots of security groups here that I definitely have one for Windows. But again, for the sake of learning, we would go ahead and create a new one. So I'll say create a new security group. I'll click on this edit button here, and then I'll just say new or Windows new, right? And then I'll do the same thing here, Windows new. And since this is going to be RDP, we would need the RDP port, right, which is 3389. So I will leave that as is. And I think currently it's going everywhere, right, which again, is not the best thing to do, but for sake of learning, we'll just leave it as is. And then for storage requirements, I'll leave it as 30. And then now I think everything should be good to go. Let me go ahead and check it one more time. So I have the name of my instance. I have my OS selected. I have my instance type. I have my key pair created, which again, I downloaded a PEM. Again, you have to know where this PEM key is, right? So if I do show in Finder, this is downloaded in my downloads folder, right? You could move it to maybe your desktop, wherever you have your PEM keys. Maybe you have a special directory, you could put that in there, right? So I just moved it to my desktop. And then, of course, with your security groups, if you have an existing security group, you could create that, but I already did that. So everything looks good. I'll go ahead and launch this instance. Okay, so instance looks like everything launched successfully. I will now go ahead and view all instances, and then I would locate the instance that I created. I named it something Ben, right? So this is the one that I just created. It looks like it's still pending. So we'll give it some time for it to start. Once it starts, we'll proceed with the next steps, which is basically going into this remote desktop application, right? And then putting in the IP and then also your username and password to RDP. Very similar to SSH, right? But for Windows, it's RDP. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and refresh this. Let's see if we have it running now. Okay, still pending state. All right, so we just it just started running. So I will go ahead and select this, and then you could click here on the connect button here. And then once you click on connect, you could see RDP client. You could just select that. And then for some Windows users, you could easily download this Windows remote file, which would basically do the same thing as you plugging in your public IP, right? It would already have that in there. And so, for the sake of learning, I'm not going to go that route. I just want to make sure that you know how to RDP regardless. So what I would do is, one second, please. Okay, so what I would do is I will go ahead and click get password to get my password. Here, it's going to ask you for the private key, basically the PEM file that we had just downloaded, right? Like I said, you may have an existing PEM file. You could use that, right? But since we created a new one, I'll go ahead and use that one. Remember, I moved this to my desktop folder, right? So I will go to my desktop, which is here, and that's that PEM key right there. So, you could, I don't think you can drag, but you could click on upload private key, go to desktop, click on the PEM key, and then say open. Once you've loaded the PEM key, you could go ahead and decrypt your password, and it will generate this password for you. This is the password that you would use to log into your Windows server, right? This is the password again. So you want to keep this somewhere secure, right? So if you have things like maybe a password vault, like one pass, you could definitely keep this password in there. Okay. So back to RDP session. Like I said, for Mac, you would need this software here. So I'll go ahead and click that. To add a new PC, just go ahead and click this plus button here and then click add new PC. It would ask you for the PC name, right? That means it's basically asking for your host name, and host name reflects to our public DNS here, right? Because again, this is in AWS, it's in the cloud, so we're connecting over the internet, right? So we need a public IP or a public DNS. So I'll copy this public DNS, and then I can just give it a friendly name like maybe Ben_Windows, and then I can add this. So you could see it would now show down here, right? It's added to my list of PCs in my Microsoft Remote Desktop. So I can double click on this now. Once you double click, it would ask you for your username and password. I would copy this username. And then the password, I can click on this as well to copy the password. Just show the password to make sure that it's copy the right thing. And let's cancel that and then go to continue. Okay. So now if I continue, you would see it's now gonna sorry, not SSH, but RDP into my Windows server. And this is how you would basically RDP into a Windows server. If you have an AWS account, you could create an ec2 on a Windows on an ec2, and then basically learn how to RDP to that server. All right, I'll go ahead and stop recording here as soon as we get the Windows screen. But hopefully this video was helpful, and you could use this video to learn how to RDP into Windows service. starting.